Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points podcast. I'm Joe Garrett, as always been joined by Ollie Guy.
Oi, oi.
Oi, oi, Ollie. Classic. And if you are new here, this is a podcast where two childhood friends play games, chat about them, and then rank them on an overall leaderboard. And the game we're talking about today is the 2005 game F.E.A.R. Do you want to talk a little bit about what F.E.A.R. is, Ollie?
Yes, I'm going to start with the Wikipedia article, but then I'm going to change over to the back of the box because I think that's more fun. It's not often we got boxes.
Yeah.
This is a really good 2005 game box. Okay, so F.E.A.R. Is a 2005 first-person shooter psychological horror video game for Windows, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, developed by Monolith Productions and published by Vivendi Universal Games. The Windows version was released worldwide in October 2005. And in the back of the box says, do you know what? I've got a big shadow over it. There we go. You are an elite soldier trained to deal with unusual situations others can't even imagine. Called in to confront a murderous force with paranormal abilities, you must contain a crisis spiraling quickly out of control. Discover the true meaning of fear, trademark, in this unique fusion of stylized FPS combat and supernatural suspense. Doesn't that sound great?
It says you have abilities. It's just ability, right?
No, you're confronting a murderous force. As in, I think it's saying like they have the ability. Paranormal ability. Yeah.
Okay.
You only have one. Also, just quickly before we carry on, without looking at have you got the game box there?
No.
Okay. What does F.E.A.R. stand for?
I think it stands for First Encounter Assault Recon, would be my guess.
That's a great
But
guess.
what do I know?
What do you know?
I have very comprehensive notes, Ollie. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. You know, speaking of like game boxes, we don't normally have them. Like, it is something that's kind of lost a little bit, is like knowing games just from their box art. Like game that you've never played, but you just always see in secondhand shops. Because I spoke to a friend of the show, Tom. He came over and I was playing F.E.A.R. And I was like, oh, do you remember this game? He's like, no, but I remember the box. and that's what you don't really get anymore, like with digital storefronts.
Yeah, true. Although this does have quite the generic, apart from the fact that we've got Alma standing at the top, it is like guy with gun. Kind of reminds me of like Battlefield.
That's what they were always like. I mean, they're still like that now, to be honest.
Yeah, to be fair. It's just got a manual. Okay, it has a manual. I'm not going to read it out, but just know that I'm excited to have a look at that after.
Is it like a proper manual, or is it just like legal information?
No, mate, it's the full. It's the full manual. Guns, gun info, and oh my god, an unused Xbox Live card.
Do you reckon that's still when Xbox Live doesn't exist? Do you reckon that's got to be gone now, right?
I'll try and redeem this. Oh no, it's a free 48-hour. I'll send this to someone who can try and redeem it, and I'll let you know. That's crazy. I'd
be curious if that. Well, I'd assume it doesn't work. You know, like I have such fond memories of buying a game and like on like the train home, like just reading the manual.
Yeah.
So I actually remember doing it where it was like way after it came out, but I brought Halo 1 again, like to play on like 360 or something. I found it secondhand because I had sold all my Xbox games, and I remember like being on the train home and like I'd never read it before, like reading the Halo 1 manual, because it's really good. It goes into like all of the guns and like has all this like lore, and it's all like properly designed. You know, it's like a little magazine about Halo.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm really enjoying this magazine for like Halo 1. I bought for like £1.
Yeah, nice.
Anyway, let's talk about F.E.A.R., not just the box, because there is a disc in the box that has a game on it that we could chat about. So, as you mentioned, it came out in 2005 on PC, and then it came out on PS3 and Xbox 360 the year after, in 2006. Both of us played the 360 version, but on the Xbox Series X, and it has some enhancements. It has some kind of upscaling stuff and maybe an FPS boost and stuff. So it was probably a slightly better experience than it was on 360, maybe slightly higher res, but essentially the same game. It wasn't like a remake or a remaster or anything. So we kind of had the pretty authentic experience. So I have memories of us playing this game. So I have a memory of round your house, us playing it on your 360, and I think I didn't have a 360 yet, or had only just got one or something, because it was pretty early on in the 360 life cycle, and you had like a bunch of music installed on your Xbox, and we were playing like probably like Prodigy or like something in the background while playing. Yeah. And I remember like thinking, I can't wait until I can do that. I can't wait until I can play games and do my own soundtracks. Like now, I would never I think it would just most games it would just completely like ruin the atmosphere. But that was my memory of this game before recently. What about you?
Weirdly enough, I mostly remembered the like chunky IT guy who's like carrying the cactus, and I remember him being a major part of the game, and like and the one jump scare, which I'm not going to spoil because people might be playing it the first time, but you know the one that's like probably the only effective one in the whole game, but it's really effective. So I remember that. And I think
it's worth saying. I won't spoil it either. Then if we're not spoiling it, but like I think one of the things why it's so effective, just while we're on it, is because there's not build up to it. Whereas a lot of the game, like we'll get more into it later, like it has like a fear sequence, and it will be like gun, 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 gun. Okay, all of the shooting stopped. Now we're getting to a spooky bit, and it will play music and it will do effects, might be teleport you somewhere and you'll be walking slow. Yeah. And there's no tension because you're like, okay, we're going to walk in a spooky bit for a bit and then back to bang, 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 shoot, 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 shoot. Yeah. Whereas the effective jump scare kind of comes out of nowhere slightly.
Yeah,
when you're doing quite a mundane activity. I mean, I assume I'm talking about the same one.
Yeah, we definitely are. Yeah, we definitely are. But yeah, I actually watched a really good video just before recording by a channel called AI and Games, where they spoke to the guy who wrote the AI for the game called Dr. Jeff Orkin, and he talks about all the development, not just the AI. And apparently one of the things they wanted to do was like make a game that was like an action film, but one of the lead guys on it like really likes Japanese horror. So it was just like kind of stuffing those two things together. And then when you know that, it's like, oh yeah, it's actually really clear now that that's what's happening. But the game is mostly running through office blocks, industrial buildings, shooting soldiers, and then every so often you kind of get like a horror trope plays out, which are like, they're better than I'm making them sound, but they're not like anything amazing. But it's like, oh, a nice little break. You walk down a corridor and it's on fire, or the ceiling is blood, and then
it's weird because most horror games avoid making the player character powerful. Like they're almost like at odds with each other. Like most horror games, like you're an everyman, a lot of them are a little bit clunky to control, it's slow to reload, you don't have much ammo, intentionally, because they want you to feel vulnerable. Whereas here you can, as we mentioned, like go into slow motion, you have all of these guns and rocket launchers and stuff, so it's like, I don't feel vulnerable, I feel like a wrecking crew, like I can destroy anything. And and a lot of the time when you go into those sequences, they do take away that stuff, but it's a very different feeling compared to like, oh, I don't have much ammo, or I only have this stick and I'm going through this scary place, I hope something doesn't jump out to me. And I think because a lot of like visually, a lot of the spooky stuff I think would be quite good, but I think because it's not on the wrappings of a horror game, it loses a bit of an edge there.
Yeah, because like you're not under any threat, because if like they can't kill you if you don't have a gun and you don't have your med kits, like they're never going to do that. So every time that one of those sequences kind of happens, like I think there's a couple where you can even take damage, but mostly you just kind of walk forward and then something goes like, bah, and it goes back to normal.
Yeah.
But the game is like, just for anyone that's not played it, first person shooter. Pretty much if you imagine like a SWAT team military style first person shooter, you're not going to be 100 miles away from what this game's like. It does have like quite a iconic look, I think, of the amount of gore there is, and also the environments, like the office and industrial building especially. Like I could see any screenshot of this game and instantly recognize it as being F.E.A.R. Like it does, despite how generic it sounds, it does have a very unique look. And then the third area is like completely different, which I think is way cooler, because obviously it's like you suddenly go somewhere else. But yeah, you generally run from start to finish. There's not really any objectives. Like you get a few very small areas that are like, oh, look for the thing, but it tends to be like a button, and then you're kind of done. But like the game is a lot of fun. Like it's really, really fun to shoot stuff. So they know what they're good at, and they play to that strength.
It took a bit of adjustment just because of the controls. Like it came out at the time when like standard controls hadn't been locked down. Like it was this was right around the time where kind of, I guess Call of Duty was probably the one that mostly did it, sort of said, hey, no, this is the standard. Anything you do different is deviating. So, for example, pushing in the right analog stick will be aiming down sights, which isn't a full aiming down sights. It's kind of like a slight zoom in. It's a bit different on different weapons. And then it's got a leaning mechanic, if you kind of think of games like Rainbow Six Siege, but by default, it's for the D-pads, which is obviously a really bad place to do it because, you're using that thumb for moving. So it's like, it's a bit awkward, like lining up, then trying to lean and then like taking your thumb off. So in the end, I ended up just not leaning very much. And then I don't know, normal difficulty, you kind of don't really need to. Maybe on harder difficulties, it becomes more important.
Yeah, I played on normal difficulty as well. And another thing that's very noticeable is like the process for like picking up guns is just doesn't really work that well. Like if you've got the gun already, if you run over it, you don't always pick it up for the ammo. Sometimes you have to stop and look at it and hold the button.
Yeah. Like hold X. It would be if the gun's like on a ledge as well. And like, you'd walk up to it, it'd be like a shotgun, and I have shotgun, I want the ammo. Then you have to like hold X on it, but sometimes you do pick it up. There's a few clunky things in the controls. I also found that even though generally I think the shooting feels good, and for most of the guns, apart from the main assault rifle, I think the audio kind of made guns sound quite kind of powerful. The recoil is very like nothing. Like so the recoil is just like, there is recoil and it will affect your aim. Like mechanically it matters, but it's basically just makes the crosshair grow bigger. There's no like proper weapon shake, or the screen doesn't move or anything. And I think that's probably from its PC heritage, possibly, where, I don't know, I always kind of associate when aiming with a mouse, like recoil being a bit more annoying. I know that's not really the case, mate. But yeah, like the shooting has aged a little bit, but it is still, still good for us, still totally playable today, someone coming in new to it.
Yeah, I wonder if the like gun shaking and like lifting as you're firing it, I wonder if it would have a problem with the slow-mo. I don't know if it would work as well, because when you're in slow motion, you're still moving your gun at full speed. So I don't know if it would just be like, okay, it's negated it, and actually it's more fun to just be unbelievably powerful. And
they could do it with just better visual effects. And like the crosshair staying still, but the outer screen shaking, or the gun moving. I was like, there are things they could have done to give that sense of impact, but it just felt like every gun just felt like very accurate. It's funny going from Alpha Protocol. It's almost the opposite issue, where that had the biggest crosshair and every gun felt like you were shooting squibs at enemies. And this one, it just felt like every gun had like perfect precision, no matter like if you held down the fire or not.
Yeah, I did find though that the enemies were not particularly accurate. The human enemies were an absolute cakewalk to fight through, but anything like a gun emplacement or like a gun turret was like really powerful compared to the humans. I don't know what was going on with that, but like human enemies, you could almost run up to them and just shoot them before they even had a chance to take a shot. And you also, a lot of the human enemies, when you shoot near them, would like crouch and cover their head, which was a bit of a like, I guess it makes sense. It was unusual to see it, but I guess it makes sense. Whereas the gun turrets, I think that's when you surprise them. I think that's if you've got close to them and they have not seen you. I think it's quite good reactive. You imagine like you're sitting here and then you suddenly hear a bang, but you don't know where from. That's kind of your reaction. Like, and that's something that you rarely see in games. Like sometimes you'll see it when there's only a few left, they will run away. Or I think of like the grunts in Halo, like, once like the elites die, they get panicky and running away. But this was them like, I think not being scared, but just being surprised by the sudden bang. I thought it was quite cool. Also speaking of accurate guns, the guns were all fun to shoot, but the one that like just turns them into a skeleton, like, come on, that gun is so cool, isn't it?
Laser thingy.
And it has a proper zoom as well, so you could like zoom right in. I mean, I remember this game coming out, and obviously I bought it, as you said, but like it was right at the peak time where like I'd played Half-Life 2 and loved it, and I played Doom 3 and loved it, and this kind of felt like the melding of those two. So I was like prime age to love this game, and I really did. As a kid, I really did love it, and I will say, like, I really enjoyed it this time around. Obviously, I could see it creaking and the flaws in it, but I was still like, God, it's so good to just like shoot panes of glass and enemies and have them all like flying around the room was just awesome. Such a fun game.
I got Half-Life 2 vibes as well. Like
Yeah.
I think the silent protagonist, I mean, there's even a bit where you're looking into a room and it's a scientist like getting killed by something, you know, like there's a few bits like that. And then especially later on where you're kind of walking around and like solving the puzzles in that kind of lab type area. I didn't expect it going in. And you kind of mentioned it briefly earlier, like shooting the glass as well, but it's like a really reactive world. It's got kind of the havoc physics that all the games kind of had at that sort of time, and you know things are smashing and breaking, and that's kind of always, I've probably brought it up on the podcast before, but with modern games is like they're way worse than they used to be, because they want everything to be so pretty and shiny and graphics is the focus. The world is often less reactive, and I know one of their inspirations, unsurprisingly, with the slow-mo is the scene in Matrix and kind of like the lobby, the kind of the famous scene where all the columns are getting destroyed and stuff. And so they kind of wanted to kind of get that sort of vibe throughout. And, you know, they don't quite get there, but, you know, both the enemies and the world being super reactive goes a long way. Yeah,
especially with like when you shoot bullet holes in the wall. I don't know if it's if you get some close together, but like a whole chunk of the wall will fall out, which is something you don't really even see now. But I will say, because I definitely want to talk about the AI. Before we get to that, the glass shooting in that and the physics is, it kind of had a weird problem that like it didn't always stick by the same rules. So there'd be like wooden boxes in front of a door, and I'd like throw a grenade at them, and the boxes just like wouldn't move. Or it would be like one floor to ceiling window, I could smash it and run through it, and that's the way I meant to go. But other floor to ceiling windows, I could smash them, but then just couldn't walk through them. So it was always a bit of a like, the path thing was always a bit like, I don't really know where I'm meant to go. Like I will find my way, but it's never clear. And a lot of the objectives are like, find this blue panel, which looks like every single computer screen in the office. So I would just run past them without even noticing that I've missed this thing. So, and then sometimes it'd be like, just jump off the edge, and that would just end the level. And it's like, I've only done it because I've run out of things to do. Otherwise, I never would have just thrown myself off a building. So that was a really weird, it kind of felt like the design of the levels was like long corridors followed by like tight loops. And you kind of run around this loop over and over again. Okay, I'm onto another corridor. Just a weird kind of design that I've never noticed in any other game before.
I think the thing that doesn't help with navigating the levels is, you kind of mentioned earlier that, you know, it's kind of slightly mundane environments like industrial buildings, office buildings, which gets a bit boring just because it's a lot of kind of grey, similar areas, but also really hurts for navigation because it's kind of really hard to judge where you've been and where you haven't been. And there's a lot of times I'm walking around where, you know, if you're in a more distinctive area with more like unique looking rooms, it's much easier to work your way around. Whereas I think a lot of the rooms looking the same. And also like, it doesn't really matter that much for a game. You're just running through shooting people. But if you try to like think about these environments logically, especially some of the industrial environments, like they make no sense. I feel like with like a modern game now, they try to make the environments feel like some sort of like they follow real world logic. Where here, if you actually thought this was an environment when there was a walkway here and this here, it's like, why would anyone build this? It's the most insane layout ever. Like it doesn't make any sense for any reason. You know, and it doesn't matter. You know, it's a game, but you know, like it's you don't really see that so much anymore.
You're like in an office and then there's like a chain link fence next to you with like a ladder going into like the crawl space between floors. Like, why would that be there? Like you're just working next to it. Like it's so random.
Yeah. Because actually I think that's one of the things that Half-Life 1 really was, I think, the first game where, you know, it does have some video gamey sections, but at least when in like the more officey areas and stuff, like it felt a little bit more real and you know, like, oh, this is an actual space, and that helps for the immersion. Yeah, definitely. Also, the other thing with like pathing and objectives and the rest of it is like 95% of the dialogue you get via like a walkie-talkie, and there's no subtitles. So I just had no idea. Like the story, I had no idea what was going on. And then like my only context for doing objectives was like pressing the back button and reading it or having it pop up in the corner, because I couldn't understand anything anyone was saying through this whole game. It was all just like interference. There's a bit with a woman and like I was standing right in front of her, but it was still coming through the walkie-talkie, and I was like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. Maybe I'm just deaf and old, but it's really hard to understand. And then the rest of the story you'd get through like voicemails on random like phones.
Telephones, yeah.
Yeah, but they're really annoying because to listen to them you have to stand next to the phone. They don't keep playing when
Yeah.
you walk away. And I listened to the first few, and then in the end I was like, I'm not going to stand here listening to this. I'd like set them going just in case like there was like an achievement for getting them all, or if it matters. So I'd always click them just to go like, I found you, and then I'd walk off and like not bother listening, which, you know, maybe I should have, but oh well, time's precious.
Yeah, you actually finished the game, didn't you?
I did. I saw credits.
And so I played up to chapter 8, part 2. There's only 11 chapters. So I was pretty close to the end. And I watched the last 3 minutes on YouTube about 20 minutes ago. So was the story like, was there anything? Was it worth following?
There were some cool moments at the end.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wasn't following the story enough throughout for the ending to mean anything. You know, I looked up today, like just a write up of the story, and even that I was kind of glazed over a little bit. Like when reading through it. Like I think there, especially for really big horror fans, there's a bit of like spooky lore to dig into and a bit of mystery in terms of like the plot and the actual characters and the events of the game. It's really not very much of anything. It's just backstory and who is the character and who is this little girl in the red dress, Alma, and stuff like it's all about. It's a story about events that have happened in the past rather than events that you're part of, is what it seemed like to me, which is, I think, a reason why I didn't find it particularly engaging. Yeah,
I don't, wasn't it like about, I mean, from what I could gather, it was like the military have been brain controlled by one bloke and they now are attacking you? That's about
so they're clones. They're
right.
They're clones. That's what you're fighting. It's like a clone army.
Okay. Okay. So they're pretty smart though, right? Like I'm trying to link it to like the AI in the game and the clones. I feel like there's something there where they made the story because they were like, we've got this AI that's really good. How do we make a story about that AI being good? Well, we've got clones that are mind controlled by something. But I had the AI at the time was like super like the main selling point of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the AI is good, but a lot of the stuff that I saw about it from watching this documentary, I didn't really notice it so much in the game.
Yeah, I had the same thing, and I think. Because I looked into quite a lot about how the AI system works, and it does seem really interesting. But I think maybe it's playing on medium difficulty, which is kind of, you know, what I see as default. Is a lot of the enemies, they just die quite quick.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, oh, and if they're hurt, they can do this. And in this situation, they're flat. And it's sort of like, oh, yeah, but normally I just see them and shoot them all and they're dead within like 10 seconds. And then the enemies that are a bit more bullet spongy, like the big shield guys, they kind of just slowly walk at you, shooting at them. And then you just
seem very clever, do they?
No, they stand out as just being a bullet sponge. And there was one just with a rocket launcher that just kept like one-shotting me. It was driving me crazy.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly who that is. He's walking from the outside, isn't he? Coming into
after like a truck goes through.
Yeah.
He drove me crazy. Glad that wasn't just me. So yeah, it seems like there's some really interesting tech, and it's still, other games have used the same system. It's the goal-orientated action planning. Other games have used it, but it still isn't like the industry standard. So it still, in some ways, holds up today, and I'm sure, you know, is a more advanced AI system than modern games coming out.
So what I gathered from watching this video, which I will link in the description and in the show notes, is that it's basically about all of the AI, all the NPCs will have one task they're trying to complete among all of them, and they will do whatever they can to complete that task. So rather than looking at it as like little steps they're trying to complete, it's like they have one overarching goal, and however they can get there, they'll get there. And then the other thing this game does is any opportunity for an NPC to work with another NPC, they'll always take that. So however that plays out, the most common one being if someone gets shot, rather than them being like, oh my God, I've been hit, someone will say to them, what's your status? And then they'll reply, I've been hit. So that's kind of how it works. It's like, oh, okay,
So for the voice thing, that's true.
Yeah.
In terms of like another one is like, say if one is going to flank, it will look for the nearest other NPC and they will say like, go flank them. Which is it's kind of the opposite way of the way it is in real life. But in terms of like the NPC, like the enemies like working as a team, like they don't. So one of the issues with this like system, this kind of goal orientated system, rather than kind of a behavior tree where you just have different states, which is what most games have. That's what Reforge has. The problem is it's only individuals. They essentially don't know anything else in the world in terms of the other NPCs. So any times where it looks like they're working as a team is just because they kind of have similar goals or like obviously like they're not working together, but if one opens a door, the other one knows that door's open. So and then if that one could go through it and stuff. So it looks like they're working together because like you say, they're basically having a goal set and then having the steps to go through, but then they're constantly like reevaluating it. And like this goal, like they create it so it should be ready for like the next frame. So it's not like they have to sit there and think for a bit. It works really quick. But the other funny thing is it applies for everything in the game, like any NPC, like friendly NPCs, but also the rats also have the same, but they're super advanced. There's like a list of like different actions that the NPCs can perform. So there's 120 in the game, but that's like across all of them. And so certain NPCs will have like different ones they can have. So the rats will have like just a few, like basically move and stop moving, basically.
Eat cheese.
Yeah, but they have to keep but they have to keep running the same thing. And so they didn't realize until years later, but there's actually like a performance hit. Because even if you like were with rats and then you like go to the other side of the level, because the rats, because they've not been killed, they're still running this thing. So they could actually have a performance hit because there's a rat on the other side. And it has to set a goal. It's running that system like constantly in the background.
Well, funny you bring that up because, I've written Cozy Colors, but I think it's Crazy Colors on YouTube. Wrote in and said, I bought this game on Steam as there was a big sale. I opened it and played for 40-ish minutes. During that time, my frame rate slowly began tanking and I opened and closed the game multiple times to get it to stop. Also, the gameplay reminded me of Half-Life 2, but much worse, although the story seemed interesting. I couldn't be bothered to play through it at 5 to 6 FPS and severe feedback lag from my mouse, and I immediately refunded it. So maybe that has got something to do with... I guess it's not really like a memory leak. It's just like it's not optimized.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's not a huge performance hit, but I think it was just the fact that it was something that was missed by the developer. I mean, this game came out in 2005. If you're playing it on a modern machine, like something else has gone wrong.
Yeah, it should be.
If you got a frame rate that's that bad. So I think there's either something with your setup or something just because the game is old, some compatibility layer. You needed a PhysX chip on your CPUs, but they're not on anymore. Like there'll be something going on like that that's probably messing it up.
That Dr. Orkin video, he actually said, it reminded me of Alpha Protocol, but he was like, when he first designed the AI system, the engineers put one soldier in an empty room and it instantly maxed out the CPU because it had like so many decisions it was making so quickly. So then they had to like pare it back. But interestingly, like what I wrote when I was playing the game I was like, I don't know if the AI is that smart or if it just has a lot of voice lines and animations. And actually watching him talk about it, it's kind of what he was saying, but at the same time, it's like, that's what AI is. Like, it's kind of difficult to talk about it because they're not really alive. They're just making decisions. And then when you can start to see the seams, it's when you can start to pick it apart. But like jumping through a window, they seem to any opportunity to jump through a window, they'll take that. Even if it means jumping to their death.
One of the things is that they can go anywhere the player can go. Like there's not like waypoints or set places or like paths through the world. As they have areas that they can go to, and then they can kind of take any means to do that, whether it's jumping, they can like climb ladders and crouch through vents, and so they can do all this stuff, but you just don't see it because you often walk in a room, either they're in the room or like they walk into it, and you kind of end up in a back and forth gunfight. The thing that I noticed is that because a lot of games with simpler AI, once you get into a gunfight, the enemy stays in cover and will like poke out a fire and shoot. And then maybe if you stay in cover for a certain amount of time, they'll throw a grenade to flush you out. Like that's kind of like the default for a shooter. Whereas in this game, if you're defensive, they immediately get like very aggressive and run up to you, but then they're just easier to shoot because they don't stay in cover. Like it's actually like it's more impressive that they can do more and they are more dynamic. And, I'm sure if you load into the same encounter every time, it will always be different. And like, that's great. But in terms of, I guess, like difficulty or what would actually be a good tactic to kill me is you're better off just staying in cover and just poking out and just shooting me.
Yeah. When they developed the AI, I mean, I literally just watched the video, so I'm like an expert now, but they had to specifically mark in the level where cover was so that the enemies aren't smart enough to be like, oh, he's round the corner, so I'll stay around here. They would have to walk up to the corner and go into cover because they're like, that's where I can stand. There is a few objects in the game where like they can tip a table over, and then if that table is tipped over, it then counts as cover, which is pretty cool when you include like the fact that some objects have physics. The one in the video they had was there was like a side table down the side of a corridor, and they managed to push it out and hide behind it. But yeah, as you said, like they're not surviving 3 seconds slow motion time in front of me, let alone like in real time.
Maybe playing on hard mode, we would have seen the full breadth of them, because as I said, apart from those few rare occasions, normal is probably too easy. Like I'm assuming you're probably the same case where you're constantly maxed out on health kits and you're like I'm going to heal to then pick up that one to get back up to 10. Like I was constantly doing that.
The balance of pickups was mental as well. Like some rooms you go in and there'd be like 4 health kits. It's like, why do I need 4 health kits in one room? But then every so often, usually these turret enemies would just kill me. And then I'd be stuck in a position where like I've only got 10 health and I'm waiting for it to regenerate to 25. So I've got a chance to kind of get out and like get through this checkpoint that I'm stuck on. I had that a few times as well. But yeah, generally the game is really, really easy. Maybe we should have tried bumping the difficulty up. I'm curious.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, in hindsight, I think hard would have probably been more fun than easy. I will just speak about, just because you didn't play through it, like towards like. Even though it was more visually interesting, I actually think the last third of the game is kind of the weakest. It's the most. There's a bit where you've got to go and like turn on all of these, press a bunch of buttons to open a door, and there's like loads of them, and it's like one of the most confusing like environments with just walkways and vents and stuff. And I'm like, have I pressed this one? Have I not? And it's really boring. And then it also introduced a new enemy. It's really goofy. It's just like these like ghost things that just really slowly fly towards you, and they're so easy to shoot, and they just all die in one shot no matter what gun you have, so you might as well just use a pistol on them all. And they're so goofy and they're boring. And then they do like, I had this bit where I saw like this big room and it had all like ammo and health around the outside of the room, and I'm like, oh, here we go, it's a boss fight. I jumped down and it was just for like several minutes just those things slowly flying at me, and I just stood at the bottom of like, it's just like a swimming pool like type room, whatever, just shooting at them. And it was really boring. And then also, obviously this might happen to everyone, I also had like 2 like quite annoying bugs. One, which was a real big problem, where everyone could see me through walls and shoot me through walls.
Oh, wow.
So I was walking around and I was getting shot, and I was like, oh, where am I? Like where are they? Like I was looking for them and I couldn't find them. And then like I was like, oh, okay, but or ignore them wherever they are. And then it just kept happening. And then I suddenly just saw bullets coming through the wall. And for a whole level until the next load, I was just constantly, and it just draining my health. So I was just having to heal, and then I was just trying to just sprint through to get to the loading point. It drained them all out. And there's footage of this as well. And then the other one, which was less bad because it was more of just one instance, but really annoying timing though, was I went in an elevator, then I just fell through the floor under the map.
That's annoying.
I always get the fun. It's always fun when you get to look up at the map and see underneath it. But then I was just stuck in the void, and then I had to reload. But it was before like one of the really long, spooky sequences that you have to slowly walk through. It was like, they're not fun to do the second time round.
I had a major bug that I spoke to you about, which I didn't even realize was a bug because I had no music for a lot of the game, and I was like, it's so cool that there's no music in this game. Like, what a cool thing, because I was like, all I could hear was like glass breaking, people screaming. I was like, this is amazing. Anyway, I actually quit because on the Xbox I was just suspending my game, so I actually quit my game, went back into it, and I had music for a bit, and then it went again. So, but I was fine with not having music. The bit of music that I heard wasn't really anything to write home about. I did also randomly have times of like a bucket would be stuck somewhere. I could hear it like vibrating.
Yeah, I had a gun. I had a gun getting stuck in the geometry. One other bug that really made me laugh that got left in the game, because it's a bug that we used to have in Reforged and then we got rid of, is that if you pause the game, then if you press continue, your character jumps. Because obviously A is jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that just really, like, it's obviously so minor, but it's just really funny that ended up being left in.
Yeah. God, do you know what? 'Cause I had quite a few load times where I'd come out the load time jumping forward. I guess it's because I was pressing A to be like, skip. And then
Skip the load time.
Well, no,
it doesn't work like that,
press A to start, and then I press it, and I just fly towards a shelf. Like,
no, if you just pause and press continue, you jump like when you get back in the game.
Yeah, no, that kind of makes sense. I mean, all this said, I actually really enjoyed the game. I think it's really fun, and it's like the correct amount of like finding you can find like boosters, which is like the correct amount of distraction away from just shooting people, which is what the game's the best at. And I had a lot of fun with it. In terms of the boosters, though, I would have liked one for my torch, because that thing runs out so quickly. Like, I've got a torch downstairs that lasts 4 hours. Weird flex, but the one in the game lasts like a minute and a half.
And the thing that's annoying with the torch is there's never a time where it's like, oh, but it ran out and I'm in the dark and I'm getting shot. It's always just you're navigating, and like but it recharges really quick, and so it's literally just like a penalty, because the game's quite obviously it's a horror game. It's like quite a dark game. It's just like it's ran out. I will stand here for literally 2.5 seconds. It's recharged, and then I carry on. It's like, why even have it run out of batteries, or like what, like, or have it in some way affect, I'm not saying make Alan Wake or whatever, but it's why it's just almost, you feel like, we need to have a meter that depletes, so we'll add one.
Yeah, I think the lighting in that does still look pretty good, though, even from a stylistic angle, more so than like a technological angle. Like the really dark shadows and really harsh shadows look really cool, especially when it catches your own body. So like you get your own shadow projected in front of you. Sort of like, obviously back in the day, this is probably one of the first games where you actually had legs and a body and you weren't just a floating pill. So pretty cool.
Yeah,
to see all that.
and they're using their own tech as well. It's their own engine. Like you mentioned earlier, that the game has kind of its very own style, and I think that's because it wasn't made in Unreal Engine 3 like everything else was in that era. So
it was
kind
called,
and like Condemned kind of have their own look.
It's called Lith Tech was the name of their engine. So I actually didn't really know anything about Monolith. Obviously, RIP to them, very recently closed down. Sometimes we manifest good things on this podcast by choosing games. Sometimes we manifest bad things. But basically, as soon as we started playing F.E.A.R, I think more or less Monolith unfortunately closed their doors. But I didn't actually know that much about their games, so I had to go back and like look on Wikipedia. And the only other one of their games I've played is I played the demo for Condemned. But apart from that, I've not touched anything that they've ever developed.
I really liked Condemned. That was one of my early 360 games. And I really enjoyed that. And then Condemned 2 as well. It's really, that would be a fun one to do in the podcast. Because I remember back then laughing at just how ridiculous it
is.
It's
horrible, isn't it? It's like really nasty.
It's they're both really horrible. But like number 2 gets more like number 1's more grounded, and number 2 gets more. There's like this cult. I think this might be wrong, but my memory of it is there's this cult that they put like stuff in their, like an iron chest or something. They have like this surgery that means they can do like this really like loud shout that like hurts people. And that might be, this is through my memory of it, but I remember it's like this, and it's like this big reveal, and then you get this power to like almost Fusro Dart.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah.
But
that's a funny game.
Yeah, I remember playing. Actually, I might have played the demo for Condemned 2, and I remember like hitting someone with like a crutch and being like, "Oh, this is really horrible. This game is like really
the whole
nasty."
thing is you're just getting things from the environment and fighting, but it uses the same AI system, and even their more modern games like Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, they use that same system as well.
Maybe their previous game, No One Lives Forever, might be a fun podcast game, because I've never played that. I'm the only thing I've seen of it is when you, on our video for What Happens Next, you showed one of the cutscenes. That's all I've ever seen of the whole game. So
I think it's tricky to play now. I think it's hard. I'm not sure if there's a good PC version because that's previous gen. So that might be a little bit tricky to play. But yeah, I've never played those.
Yeah, but did you like the game? Did you like F.E.A.R?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like from the conversation, it sounds like you maybe enjoyed it more than me. Like it's not a long game, and it feels too long.
I didn't finish it. I didn't finish it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
For the amount of enemy variety, because I think the thing is, it's like most of it is you're fighting like these, human clones, whatever. I think replicants, I think is what they're called in it. You're fighting these.
They're called.
So you're fighting those guys throughout most of the game, and then they have a few other ones that you fight as well. But it's not enough enemy variety. But the thing is, they're always the most fun thing to shoot. Like everything else they add, like the flying robot things, the gun turrets, the stupid ghost things that are coming at you. There's like these mech things. They're okay to fight because they're kind of almost like mini boss fights. But like there's not much enemy variety. And when there is, it's kind of worse.
Yeah.
So, what would be really great is and then there's like those ninja guys, which are okay.
You only fight them like once or twice, right? I thought they were going to be the new standard enemy, but they just disappeared.
I think what they needed was like a few other, even if it's classes of enemies that fight in a unique way, but then combinations of them with the, it's often those human guys or something else instead, whereas there definitely needed to be some sort of shake-up. And it has moments. It's a game with moments. There's a bit that we spoke a little bit about before the podcast where you're kind of riding up an elevator, and on each floor the doors, like they've pressed the buttons to open it, and you have a little shootout, and then the door closes. There's another bit that stood out to me where there's a big explosion and it just launches you back and you land in the water. That was just like a cool little moment.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah, there's also the bit roughly around where I stopped was where the trucks are starting to drive down the alleyways, and you've got to like dodge out of the way. So like that's only as much of the third section that I played, which is probably why I was like, oh, it's so fresh, because like I've been running around the same buildings, and then you kind of go to this apartment complex and like fight your way up and then down the other side, and then these trucks kind of come through. Actually, that's you just pointed out the like cyborg bosses. I think I fought 2 of them, but both of them during the fight I managed to like run backwards into a dead end. Like, even though I didn't really feel like I feel like in a modern game it would be designed to be like more of a loop. So I'd be like running backwards shooting, and I'd be like, oh, I'm in a room and he's standing at the door and just shooting me to bits. Yeah, still quite cool boss fights though. Yeah. So those are good moments, but like I think it's, so there's a mode in the game which is like, it's called like, well, there's a bonus mission, and then there's also like, I think it's called like instant action. I think it's called. Hang on, it's called. Oh yeah, it's called Instant Action, an arcade-style mode filled with close-quarters battles, tracking players' progress via Xbox Live. Is the official?
Yeah, so I checked out them like briefly because it was after I'd finished the game, and I wasn't looking for more by then. But like that seems like a really good way to do this kind of game. Like obviously you're losing a lot of, you're losing the story and the horror side of it, but like, I could imagine that being a thing that back in the day you'd be like, oh, I'm going to load up F.E.A.R and just like do some of these instant action things. Although one of them's that boss fight I said about with just the ghosts.
Oh, really?
I was like,
so is it all like scenarios from the game?
Yeah, but I think they're not the same as the game. I think you're coming at it from a different angle or different enemies or something. And then the other thing which we've not spoke about is there was multiplayer. Like, I mean, you're not going to get into a game now playing it. Well,
I managed to successfully host a game, so it might still work. Yes, I did.
But no one joined.
Well, no one joined.
Okay, that's what I was saying.
No, I was going to text you and say like we potentially can do it because it is working. Like a lot of these old games, you just can't even do that. So
yeah.
But
I mean, I assume they don't have any servers apart from kind of leaderboards, I guess, maybe still up. But yeah, like I looked up online, and it looks like what the multiplayer was for all of these kind of games where it's definitely not the focus. It seems like there was some interesting stuff with like the slow motion almost probably like the Max Payne 3 multiplayer, where because obviously if someone's in slow motion, everyone has to be, which they ditched for the sequels, surprisingly.
What, the solo?
So for the multiplayer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We haven't spoke about the sequels. Have you played any of the sequels?
No, I saw a couple of videos of them, but they look like a lot more advanced than this because the last one came out in 2011. So that one looks like way more cinematic than this one does. But no, I didn't play them. I know that there's two of them. There's also DLC for this game, isn't there? 2 DLCs, which
I didn't know that.
Yeah, one of them's called like Extraction Point or Point Insertion or something. I can't remember. Something about going in or out of a point is what it's named after.
Do you have any idea how successful this game was?
No idea. I'm assuming pretty successful, at least in the UK. Like everyone I knew had at least played it. So
yeah, well, just if they did DLC and 2 sequels, you know.
I thought you were going to tell me.
No, sorry, no, I wasn't.
I'll quickly look it up. Hang on, F.E.A.R sales numbers.
It seems from what I saw of the sequels, it seems like people like 2, and then 3 seems people are very divisive on. It seems like it ditched a lot of the horror side from it, and apparently the AI is really bad in the 3rd one, which is quite funny, seeing as that's what the series was known for.
Yeah, the guy that originally made the AI is only credited for the first game. Apparently on the second game he did like some consulting and stuff, but he's not credited on it. So the 2 expansion packs are called F.E.A.R Extraction Point and F.E.A.R Persis Mandate, and the original game sold 3 million copies, which is no small amount in 2005. So
no, or now really.
No,
I bet the game didn't have a giant budget either. By today's standards.
It had a budget of 5 million. And it had a team of 35 people. God, I'm like a scholar from watching this video. Which I actually then went back and worked out, which obviously is just napkin maths, but they all got paid about $50,000 a year each. So, because I was curious. So yeah, not a huge... I think it was their biggest project ever, and it started life as No One Lives Forever 3. That's what they got the funding for. And then they basically made this little demo where it was like the action movie crossed with the Japanese horror film, took that back to the publishers and were like, instead of No One Lives Forever, we'd actually like to make this. And they were like, okay, make that. Great. And they also said that...
Very different type. No One Lives Forever is a like kind of comedy James Bond parody style game.
Yeah, so they were saying games like Half-Life 2 and Halo had come out, and they were like... They basically said the 1960s vibe of No One Lives Forever wouldn't work anymore. And that was their main pivoting point. So that's how we ended up with First Encounter Assault Recon as we know it today.
As we know and love. Did anyone else play it?
We actually got quite a lot of comments. So the Chainsaw Cat said, as of commenting this, I'm playing through the game for the first time. Something that surprised me was the atmosphere of the game. It really sets a great mood, IMO, but I thought it was a lot more about the shooting aspects. Was there anything good or bad that you weren't really expecting to be as big a part as it is? As a side note, did you try the multiplayer, which obviously we went into? But yeah, I think the front of the game is way heavier on the like, it's a horror game. Yeah. And then you kind of lose it about a third of the way through, which like, I'm fine with that. Like the shooting is where it's at. The horror stuff is an interesting diversion, but it's not really enough to sustain.
I imagine that the horror stuff like was much more, well, definitely would have been much more expensive to produce because it's kind of custom, kind of unique scenarios, whereas another room and put enemies in it, you know, once you've built the AI system and stuff, it's probably quite easy. So I wonder if they had an expectation of how frequently they wanted those moments and then they realized that's not really achievable.
Yeah, I wonder how cool it would have been, like, completely just theorizing here, if they'd applied some of the AI to the actual horror elements and had enemies that was like horror enemies that were haunting you that were smarter than just most of them just stand at the end of a corridor. They disappear.
Yeah. And they're like, they feel like pretty. So in those sequences, they are still following the same system. Like every NPC does. They do have a goal of standing at the end of the corridor.
Looking scary.
But yeah, like or a singular thing hunting you. You know, where you actually get to, you're hiding in the room. You're almost like Alien Isolation, but with like, and you're seeing it move. Would be cool. One thing that I just remind myself of when I said about kind of things being kind of expensive to produce and them not doing them, vehicles was going to be a big part of the game. And they spent 2 months working on the opening sequence was going to be this whole big car sequence, and then they ended up realizing it wasn't working and scrapping it. But yeah, vehicle and vehicular combat was going to be a bigger part of the game initially.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine like the environments in which they would take place. There's a couple of back alleys behind the office, but they would have to make huge areas to cover vehicle combat, which the game just doesn't seem like it's made for.
It'd be like a highway of like a Scooby-Doo repeating background. That's what it would be. You'll be driving down.
Okay. The Boss Baby from the movie, the Boss Baby 3605 wrote in and said, what is your opinion on horror games in general? And if you could lay out your expectations for how this game is going to terrify you before playing it. I will tell you now, we've both played this before, and I don't think either of us, I think we both knew it wasn't going to be scary this time around, right?
Yeah, I don't like scary games, and I picked it. So
yeah, oh, you played, I don't know. You always say that, but I mean, for this podcast, you've played Alan Wake 2, Silent Hill. You play every Resident Evil when it comes out.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, you got me into Resident Evil. I never used to play them, and then you've got me into them. Like, I don't like. There's games that are horror games that I enjoy, but it's not the being scared part I enjoy from them, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, there's games like Resident Evil. You know, you could remove anything horror and it would still be just a fun game with that gameplay and stuff.
Yeah, Resident Evil is not that scary, to be fair.
Yeah. So I'm not someone who's like, well, let's find the next scary game to be scared. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm really into horror games, but like I'm not into being scared. Not to sound tough, but I don't generally find them to be that scary. But I really enjoy the push and pull of like the resources. That's what I really like about horror games is like, have I got enough resources to get through this next section? So like Resident Evil is obviously a prime example of that. Newer horror games you don't really get that so much because they give you so much of everything. But like playing Resident Evil 1, I mean, we did a whole episode on it, but just the quick version is like the idea of being in the safe room and being like, I need to get to that place that is, 5 rooms away. Have I got enough preparation to get myself that far without dying? Like, I really enjoyed that aspect of horror games and not being the most powerful thing. But this game threw that out the window. So it also has a whole like melee system we haven't even talked about. That's like completely does not need to be in it. Where you can like jump, drag and kick, like slide and kick, and like uppercuts. It's like all you're trying to do is swing your gun. Yeah, crazy. That's all in it as well.
And they don't explain it very well.
No,
they just have like one little pop up. Yeah, so I never use that stuff.
No. Okay. Last question then. Adam OY6NC says, I know the AI in F.E.A.R was considered revolutionary at the time. Do you think modern FPS games have improved a lot, or does F.E.A.R still hold up in that regard? And they've got an interesting question. That is, what could modern FPS games learn from F.E.A.R? Oh, it's a thinker.
I'm trying to think if there's something that has got worse or hasn't really been surpassed. I'm struggling to think of it.
One thing I really like about this game, I briefly mentioned it, is like the harsh lighting. It's really cool. Like to have that kind of high contrast. Like, don't be worried that your players are not going to be able to find things and not going to be able to see enemies. Like they'll figure it out. Like you give them a torch, they'll figure it out. That kind of really stylish lighting looks super cool. And I think a lot of modern FPS games, other than the models of the guns, they kind of all look the same. Whereas this game actually has like a style to it, and like they've obviously gone for something and they've nailed it. So that's what I would say they could learn from.
I've got one. Well, one thing that I like, and not all games do this, but I like the fact that the guns aren't like, oh, you start off with the bad guns and then you get the better guns. Like, it's just, no, there's the submachine gun, the shotgun. Like, there's the different types of guns, but like they all remain viable throughout the whole game. So you can kind of choose which one you want. I hate it when it's like I have the assault rifle and then I get the stronger assault rifle, and it's like, okay, what's the point in that? It's just, no, here's the lineup of guns, and then it's kind of down to your preference or what size environment you're in, which one you pick. Yeah.
Also, the other thing this game has, just kind of, I guess, is part of the style as well. It's like when you shoot something, it will react in a way that like looks exciting. like it will fire sparks out of it, or it will explode or shatter or something. It'd be cool if a lot of new games did that as well, where it's like, I'm really firing a machine gun into a room full of computers, so I'm expecting it
like
to
the reactive environments I spoke about, and the enemies as well. Although something that I found that I use the shotgun a lot. And a lot of the times, if you shoot them with a shotgun up close, they're meant to like explode, but they just like disappear. And it's like a bug because it's like so quick.
And then it's like there's like jibs.
But at the time you shoot them, and the model's just gone. Like especially if you do it in slow motion.
Going back actually to that question quick about it being scary. I was trying to talk to my partner about. Because when you first start the game, a lot of the character, like the NPCs, they get turned into skeletons, like instantly die. And I was saying, like, I don't think it's that scary because I think there are fates worse than dying instantly. And it's quite a hard thing to like think about and describe, but like, I don't know. Whenever it comes to horror, I'm like, oh, if the worst thing is that they kill you, then that's not that bad. Do you know what I mean? Is that weird? Is that a weird thing to say? I don't know.
I feel like it's always once you've died once and you're like, oh, it's fine. Like like there's the time before you've died or like even had a dangerous encounter in horror games is always the scariest for me. Once I've been killed once and I respawn and I'm going through it again, I'm like, oh, okay, when I die, I lose 30 seconds of progress. I can live with that, With it's fine.
Yeah, like I saw something, it must have been on a YouTube video years and years ago where they're talking about Resident Evil 4 and they were like, the fact that Leon is infected and potentially going to turn is more scary than dying in the game because you'll respawn. So it's like that fate is worse than dying, and that's what makes stuff scary, in my opinion. I don't know if I've explained that clear enough, but that's what I've always thought.
No, I agree with that.
Lovely. What a lovely chat we're having. Okay, so should we put it on the list then?
Yep, let's put it on the list.
Did you know we have a Patreon? Maybe you're unsure what that is.
Patreon allows you to support us directly, and in return you get exclusive stuff. Access to our Discord server, behind-the-scenes content, and an exclusive podcast series.
Your support means we can up our production and continue making fun videos. You can join us at patreon.com/thebonuspoints. And it has a free trial too.
Woohoo! Okay, so this is going to be 83 on the list. Well, not in the 83rd position, I'm sure, but this is the 83rd game we are adding to the list. So which way do you want to do this? Like, I'm feeling you're hotter on it than I am. Do you want to have you go first and it maybe goes down? I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Just give me an area. Give me a zone.
Yeah. I think, look, I enjoy this game a lot. It's not Titanfall 2, but I had a lot of fun with it while being like, this is from 2005 and feels like it's from 2005, but I'm still having a good time. I kind of think actually around where I've put it is already kind of the right area, like probably 30 to 40, 45 maybe. It's a pretty fun time. Like, it's a good time.
I mean, 30 is like Indica. I mean, I guess we look at games similar era, Skate and Alan Wake are kind of around there. I would have them above this. I
would too. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, to be honest, I'm looking. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking quite a lot lower than you. Like, I think
it's fun, mate. It's a fun game. It's just a fun.
No,
old
yeah,
time.
I know, but there's loads of fun games here. And like, I think I'd have Halo Infinite above it. I think I enjoy. I think just the core shooting in Halo Infinite, despite it being a bad. Well, I'm not say bad. Like a Halo campaign that we didn't enjoy the setup for.
I don't even know where Halo Infinite is. Oh, 49.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, to be fair,
I think the shooting's like I enjoyed the react. Like I think like you said, the AI is. I enjoyed more reading about the AI than and hearing about how it works and how clever it is. You know, if no one told me the AI was really good.
Yeah,
I don't think it would have come up much. You know, it just wouldn't have come up as us saying it's bad, which sometimes happens in games from this era.
No, I mean, what it really reminded me of was in Half-Life 1 when you would kind of hear the AI barking at each other. That's what it mostly reminded me of, more than being like, God, this AI is completely outsmarting me, because it just, the difficulty we played on it just stood there and took it, basically.
Yeah, like you said, it was like they could do a lot of stuff, but it didn't. Like, I don't think it really enhanced my gameplay experience, other than, I guess, if you died or if you replayed the game, it would be, you know, people wouldn't be in the same place every time, which I guess is good. But yeah, I think the core shooting's solid, but like there wasn't the horror wasn't great. The story neither of us like got engaged with. I don't know.
What about above Splinter Cell Blacklist? If you were going to play one of these again, you're going to pick one up. Me and you are going to play. If I said to you, we can play one of these games in multiplayer, which one would you go for?
Oh, well, the co-op missions in Splinter Cell were cool.
Nah, they weren't.
They were quite good.
I never saw them. I'll admit, I never saw them. Okay.
Oh yeah, you didn't play it. You didn't play them.
I didn't play them.
Yeah, I forgot about that. No, it's got really good co-op. Like it has like bits where like one person's in the gunner above and someone's going through the level and stuff. You picked a bad. The what one would you replay? F.E.A.R is more replayable than Blacklist. It's just a type of game that is. Action games like that are more replayable, I think. But I think I preferred Splinter Cell Blacklist. I think I preferred Phoenix Wright.
It's getting talked down. Yeah, I mean, I prefer Phoenix Wright too. It's in a crazy. This list is in a crazy order, but I mean, it can go below Halo. Look, you love Halo. Master Chief's your homeboy. You can put.
Yeah, I think I'd put it under Halo, one above Metal Gear Rising.
Okay, I think that's fine. Yeah, I think so.
Are you just saying that because you got to go out soon, or are you actually?
I've also got a move that I wanted to do, but I don't have time. I think Rocket Slime's too low, but we'll get to that another time.
We don't have time. Everything's going to stay as it is. Look, everything's perfect.
To be honest with you, that 36 to 50 area, so many things are like in a weird place that it's kind of difficult. Like I think Phoenix Wright's probably too low. Looking back on it and the time that we had with it, we had a really good time. And like obviously Resident Evil's down there, which is insane. Like it's way too low. So that whole area is a bit of a write-off. So basically, if it's in there, if it's somewhere between 40 and 50, wherever it lands, it's where it lands.
It's on your work in progress section. That's your to-do list. To reorganize. Well, it makes it because everything's put in. You know, the list isn't formed when we're adding them. We add it to fit in as the list was then, and then we add other stuff. It's not like we were given 83 games to then order. We're adding them as we go. We have our big reshuffle.
If we had done it the way you just said, I reckon the top 15 would be more or less the same, and then after that it would start to change because we've really got some of the best games ever made in the top 15.
Yeah, I guess it's more to do with like. The top 15 in terms of their order is more to do with like they're all quality games and it's more to do with the debate rather than what game is better or not, I think, and the personal love and like Pokemon Gold Silver, that is probably the game most riding on nostalgia out of any of these games here, and so that's one you can take with a grain of salt maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, top 50 for F.E.A.R.
Just about.
But you know what? Like, look, if you can get this game for like, you get it cheap on Steam. It's worth a little run through, even if you only play the first few levels. It's worth it just because it's of all of the like time capsule games, this one is actually good. So it's worth going back and just. Yeah.
There's not a lot of games of this era you go back and there's just one thing that's broken and it drives you because like the camera's broken or the crosshair's too big or whatever it is. There's one thing that just like games have improved and it really shows its age. And this doesn't have that. Like this, we said about the controls are a little bit, unintuitive and, a bit not typical for how they are now. But to move and shoot and stuff. Some of the grenades are a bit slow, like that thing where you can throw a grenade and then set it off. It's so slow.
Yeah, also just changing grenades between grenades. It's just so slow, and really easy to do by accident because like the whole D-pad. Because I used the lean config, which is good for leaning and shooting, but pretty much bad for everything else. So like, I think the flashlight was on down on the D-pad, and like it's just all really confusing and non-intuitive layout.
But anyway. So I just kind of left it on frag grenades the whole game, so I didn't have to deal with any of that.
I only used the remote ones when it came to the gun turrets because it was really good against those.
Okay. Right, so I'll read out the section. I'll go 46 to 51, I guess. So at 46, way too low, is Resident Evil, the 2002 remake. At 47 is Splinter Cell Blacklist. 48 is Phoenix Wright, way too low. We had fun with that. 49 is Halo Infinite, way too high. You hated the campaign. Number 50 is F.E.A.R, and then at 51 is Metal Gear Rising.
Mate, if I did that every time for all your games, it'd be like, Halo Infinite's so good. It's got my big green friend in it. It's the best game series ever. I used to like the multiplayer, but I don't anymore. It needs to go at the top.
Hey, I don't. I've not thought Halo to move up in a long time.
It's coming.
We shared thoughts for the campaign, and I've not touched the multiplayer in a while. You're fine, but
No, fair enough.
it was just that, Sam. But another game, famously really good AI, Halo. To be fair, so it's kind of nice that they're together.
Yeah, they're together, clinging on to what used to be.
But yeah, that's the end of this discussion to do with F.E.A.R. Do you want to mention what games we're going to be doing in the future?
Yes. Next time, 4th of April, we've got Natsumon 20th Century Summer Kid, which is like a summer vacation simulator on the Switch and on the PC. And then the 18th of April, we have Dead Island 2, which is on Game Pass and PC and PS5 as well. Then we have 2 empty slots. So there's a chance everyone to submit something in the comments, get something in front of us that we can consider. And then on the 30th of May, we have Doom the Dark Ages with a guest. And to everyone out there who said, we don't have guests anymore because we've run out of friends, let me tell you now, I've got 4 brothers. And only one of them's been on the show before. So I've got at least 3 more guests lined up. And my dad's pretty into games as well. So don't you worry about that. But yeah, Doom the Dark Ages, 30th of May. And I think we talked, I don't know if we confirmed it. We talked about doing Death Stranding 2, right? When that comes out.
I don't know if we've confirmed it, but I mean, people wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. It's coming out in June, so I guess we'll do it like late July. So there's probably be another couple gaps and then Death Stranding 2. So yeah, there we go. Please let us know what games you'd like us to play. Yeah,
leave them a comment down below. Now's the best time because we're hunting for them. We won't ignore you like we normally do. But yeah, that's the end of this episode here. Join us in 2 weeks to do what's it called? I'm never gonna remember the name.
You picked it. Natsumon 20th Century Summer Kid. Yeah, just call it Natsumon.
Natsumon. I should call it Kid. That's the bit I'll remember. We'll be there in 2 weeks to play Kid. Join us for that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.